Meditation on standing posture. Satuchon and faithful inquirers of Dhamma. In commemoration of the Magha Puja season, this is the 5th lecture in the series on Samatha Vipassana meditation of the nuclear age. I will speak on the topic of meditation on standing posture. I would like to review some part of the last lecture so that it becomes the basis for this one. But I won't repeat the details if they are similar. In the 3rd lecture, I talked about the general principle in the practice of breathing mindfulness. This principle may be used in any posture. You are supposed to get insights into the various feelings, actions, and dispositions. You must be able to analyze for yourself the character of those demeanors. These are the basic essentials for every topic dealt with in the series. For example, in being mindful of breathing, you have to feel whether you are breathing in or breathing out. You must tell yourself each time, not necessarily out loud, that you are breathing in, yeah, or that you are breathing out, yeah. It's not the saying out loud that counts. It must be the saying of the heart. The heart tells you that you are breathing in, yeah, breathing out, yeah. It will be useful only when you really feel the act of breathing in and out, or whatever act that you choose to be mindful of. I have talked about walking posture. Just understand that we have to learn to be mindful of every posture. This is so that we can maintain mindfulness at all times, without a break for the rest of our life. Each day we have to go through all kinds of posture: standing, sitting, lying down. These are the major postures. Then there are also those miscellaneous ones, such as stretching one's legs, bending, turning one's face forward and backward, eating, drinking, taking a bath, going to a stool, wiping, mopping, and so on. Whatever you are doing, do it with perfect awareness. Tell yourself each time that you are doing such and such. Last time I talked quite in detail about walking movement. Review it in your mind so that you may make use of some of the information that fits in with the lecture today. This walking movement is more significant than the other kinds of posture. If you are concentrating properly in walking, you will be able to gain the insight that offers better perspective, clarity, firmness, and refinement than any other posture. You have to be exceptionally keen to be able to get properly concentrated in the walking movement. Since it requires a great deal of keenness, it can offer great depth and firmness. Therefore, I must say that one should pay good attention to walking. Now, today I will talk about standing posture. I will speak only shortly because I'm not well and cannot speak as long as I used to. Nevertheless, I will cover what is necessary. So pay good attention to that you may acquire. After my talk, I will let you listen to the tape on the subject that might be of interest to you. You should realize that the standing posture is also related to other postures. For example, we are sitting now, then we may change to the posture of standing. At this juncture, we have to possess the most perfect sati or awareness in telling ourselves that we are changing the posture. We will change, we will change from the sitting posture to the standing posture. Then we go about changing. All the while we have to be mindful of the posture of the change. You should do this changing of posture very slowly and gradually. Now suppose you are sitting and then you wish to change to standing. First of all, you have to tell yourself with a feeling that you are being in the sitting posture. You may say, sitting, yeah, sitting, yeah, sitting, yeah. You have to make it clear to yourself that you are sitting. After that, you may start lifting yourself up. You feel the action and at the same time telling yourself that you are lifting. Lifting, yeah, lifting, yeah. Do this continuously. Don't break your mindfulness. So you are lifting yourself up, 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 yeah, up, yeah, up, yeah. This until you stand up fully. Then you tell yourself, stand, yeah, stand, yeah, stand, yeah. Suppose you have any other miscellaneous posture, such as putting the hands crossing in front of you. You should also get into the feeling that you are crossing your hands. Crossing, yeah, crossing, yeah, crossing, yeah. All the while keep your mindfulness continuous. Now suppose you are walking and then you wish to change to standing. You have to get yourself into the feeling that you are walking. Walking, yeah, walking, yeah. Keep your mindfulness continuous. Right, yeah, left, yeah. Then right, stop, yeah, left, stop, yeah. Then both feet come to a stop. This is the way to bring the walking movement to a stop. After that, you should get into the feeling that you are standing. Standing, yeah, standing, yeah. As the mindfulness is still crude, you may be mindful just of the standing posture. Standing, yeah, standing, yeah. If you wish to make it a little more refined, you may be mindful of the point at which you stretch yourself and the point at which you slacken. Then as you come to a complete stop, you may tell yourself, standing, yeah, standing, yeah. Now, if you are standing with one leg slack, you should be mindful that that particular leg is slack. Slack, yeah. As you are standing, you should also be mindful of breathing. Breathing in, yeah. Breathing out, yeah. As in the third lecture, there is the general principle that if you have any intruding feeling or sense object, you should make yourself mindful of it. Even if you are feeling lopsided, tilting or whatever, you should also make yourself mindful. When such a feeling disappears, then you may come back to be mindful of the principal posture that you have chosen for your mindfulness. And in this case, it is mindfulness of standing. Standing, yeah. Standing, yeah. This is mindfulness of standing. As you are standing, you should be mindful of the object of contemplation in such a way that you progress upwards until you come to the highest principle in which you feel the eradication of attachment. This might sound a bit different from what you might hear from other schools, because as I told you from the beginning, this is the lecture for the nuclear age, so it is a shortcut. In this way, you are supposed to practice to attain one-pointedness only briefly, Then you may move to contemplate impermanence, suffering, and selflessness. You don't have to practice to the point of absorption. You might just contemplate the refined principle of Dhamma. After you have contemplated the posture, standing, thoroughly for a while, then you may go on to contemplate the mental and physical aggregates. You may follow the process that I have explained in the third lecture. Briefly speaking, you should be mindful of the standing posture. The perception of the standing posture is the mental aggregate. So you acknowledge that this is nama, However, the manner of standing, the appearance, the legs, these are the rupa. When you get into the feeling of the rupa, you may say rupa, If you get into the feeling of the nama, you may say nama, You should become thoroughly conscious of the mental and physical aggregates as mentioned. Try to review them back and forth so that you will become keen on the semantic expression of the words nama and rupa. Practice this thoroughly. If you wish to be mindful of the aggregates, you may contemplate the organs by which you stand, the manner of standing, the appearance. In this case, you are acknowledging the rupa aggregate. If you have any kind of feeling in the meantime, say a feeling of ache or pain or whatever, you have to be mindful of it right away. You should see it as a feeling. Feeling, 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 If you have a recollection, even if it be a recollection that you are standing, you should be mindful, saying sanya, If you have a thought, you should be aware that it is sankhara, And if anything comes to your consciousness, whether it be a sight, a smell, or any kind of object of the sense, you should acknowledge that it is vijnana, Don't miss it. Keep it in the realm of your mindfulness. Even if we are standing, we can acknowledge a lot in the matter of the rupa, vedana, sanya, sankhara, and vijnana. It won't be long before you are keen on the contemplation of these. You will realize right away as to what is the rupa, what is the vedana, the sanya, the sankhara, or the vijnana. This is what is meant by being mindful of the mental and physical aggregates. Now, we move up the next step. One more step. You are to be mindful of risings and fallings. Risings and fallings. The word rising in the Tamil language means functioning. That which is functioning is rising. That which stops functioning falls. If there is sitting, then sitting rises. If there is standing, then standing rises. When a posture is changed, it may be said that the posture falls. Crudely, you may be mindful of the rising of the standing posture, and then you may be mindful of the falling of the standing posture. When the standing posture rises, you may say, rise, rise, Then when the standing posture comes to an end, you should get into the feeling that it falls. Fall, Fall, This is the crude way to be mindful of the posture. Now, to make it more meticulous, you are to contemplate the rising of a physical occurrence or the occurrence of a sense object or the point of occurrence. Then you may tell yourself that such and such rises. If you are mindful of the physical aggregate, you may observe the rising of the physical body. If you are mindful of the manner of standing, you may observe also the rising of the physical body, which is called Upataya Rupa. You may be mindful of the flesh and the skin that constitute the posture. This is also mindfulness of the rising of the physical body. This is the type of the physical element that is derived from Mahaputta Rupa, the four great essential elements: solid, fluid, air, fire. Upataya Rupa refers to the manner and the appearance of the posture, whether it be an apparent physical body or still a hidden one. They are all Rupa. When the chitta becomes mindful of the Rupa, you may tell yourself, Rupa, yeah. When you are mindful of its rising, you may say, rise, yeah. When you observe that it is gone, you may say, fall, yeah. When any feeling occurs, you may say, rise, yeah. When that feeling is gone, you may say, fall, yeah. Don't just mumble the words without actually feeling the situation. You must make yourself clearly aware of the situation before you say, rise, yeah, or fall, yeah. You see, this is not a book recitation. You have to actually feel the case before you utter those words. When a recollection occurs, rise, yeah. When a recollection disappears, fall, yeah. When a thought occurs and disappears, or when a consciousness occurs and disappears, you say the same thing. Don't just recite the words, and don't say them before a situation actually occurs. You have to be clear in your heart before you say those words. You just say them to yourself, no need to say them out loud. The ya means that this is just a passing recognition, The next step is to contemplate impermanence. That which exists may now depart. This is impermanent, yeah? Impermanent, yeah? This posture is present and then it is not. This is impermanent, yeah? Impermanent, yeah? Also, the feeling that is now present may later be gone. This is impermanent, yeah? You have to actually feel that impermanence. You have to feel that it is impermanent. You have to feel that even the feeling itself may rise and fall. The recollection, once we remember this and that, but later we may forget. This is impermanent. And you have to make it clear to the utmost. So you tell yourself, impermanent, yeah? You do this for both the mental and the physical aggregates, for the rupa, for the vedana, the sanya, the sankhara, and the vijnana. You probably understand by now that you have to do things with the chitta or with the heart that is meticulous, mature, refined, calm. You will succeed only when you are meticulous, mature, refined, calm. If you succeed, you may be said to be meticulous, mature, refined, calm. As you are being mindful of the change from one state to another, you are observing impermanence. Yeah? Tell yourself repeatedly, impermanence. Yeah? Impermanence. Yeah? Impermanence. Yeah? Choose the shortest expression and the easiest for you to understand. If you like the word impermanence, you may say impermanence, yeah? But if you prefer the word anicca, you may say anicca, yeah? The next step the next step further, you are to contemplate selflessness. Each sense object should be viewed as a passing occurrence. It is that way, and it exists as part of nature. There is not such a thing as the self, or a creature, or a person. For example, as you are being mindful of your breathing, you will acknowledge that it is just a part of nature. It functions in accordance with nature. It is that way, and there is not a creature nor a person who is the owner of the breathing. The Lord Buddha says, the breath is an element in nature. It is that way, and there is not a creature nor a person. The essence of the matter may be lengthily expounded, but it is enough to be mindful just that this is not a self, yeah, or anatta, yeah, anatta, yeah. If you start out by being mindful of the long and short duration of the breathing, you may also end up being mindful of anatta, yeah. And if a feeling rises, you may acknowledge it as a passing occurrence. It is just a feeling that rises in accordance with nature. There is not a creature nor a person. Let's make a thorough understanding. The matter is long, and we cannot be mindful of the whole thing. It's lengthy indeed. But we can choose to be mindful of a short extract. Not a self, yeah? Not a person, yeah? Or anatta, yeah? You follow the same procedure as you do in contemplating impermanence and the mental and physical aggregates. You may observe selflessness in each sense object. Instead of seeing impermanence, you see selflessness. Anatta, yeah? Anatta, yeah? When you come to the standing posture, you are to see it as a natural derivation. There is not a person who stands. There is not an owner of the act of standing. It is just the posture that happens to exist in nature. No self, yeah? No self, yeah? Anatta, yeah? You may use the Pali word if you like. Nevertheless, don't forget that the most important thing is you have to feel that way truly. You must actually get an insight and feel that there is not a creature or a person or a self. That is just a standing posture. It is in accordance with nature. It functions in accordance with the law of causation. That's all. There is not a human being, a person, a creature, a life, a soul who is doing the standing. The essential thing is that there is the standing posture that exists in accordance with nature, an element in nature existing in accordance with the law of nature. There is no body, no self, no person. Once you have attained fully such an insight, you may utter the expression, not a self, yeah? Not a self, yeah? Not a self, yeah? Yes, this is the way to contemplate anatta. To sum up, there is not a person who stands. All right, you are standing and then observe that there is not a person who stands. If you don't understand the point, this might sound crazy, or it might seem as if it has a malicious intent to sound that way. Yes, if you don't understand, you might want to yell out that this is plain crazy. But here you are feeling. You are being mindful of the posture, and you are seeing that things are working out in accordance with the law of nature, especially the law of causation. As you are observing just the act of standing like this, standing, yeah, standing, yeah, how can there be a body or a person? If a feeling occurs, then you switch to contemplate the feeling. Feeling, yeah, it's that way. That's all. Yeah. Vedana. Yeah. Sanya. Yeah. No one who acts out the feeling, the recollection, the thought, or the consciousness. Why do we have to practice so hard? Well, we have to because we have to acquire insights into the mental and physical aggregates. The rupa, the vedana, the sanya, the sankhara, the vijnana. Once you catch them, you contemplate them. Then it will dawn on you that, oh, this is nature's making, in accordance with the law of causation. This functions in such a way that is called rupa, vedana, sanya, sankhara, vijnana. Or one may call them in any way one prefers. This is the way to contemplate selflessness. Now we go up one more step to the contemplation of relief. You are going to be relieved from what? Well, it is the relief from attachment, from that which is ignorantly conceived. Ignorance breeds attachment to the self. It breeds the feeling that this is a self, my feeling, my recollection, my thought, my feeling for a sense object, my sense object. Yes, this is indeed ignorant. This feeling of attachment that leads to the feeling of the self. Since you are analyzing yourself and chop it into bits, you will see no self. This is really a chop up. In this way, you are going to experience a relief from attachment. Aha! There is going to be a relief from that stupid attachment. Even if it be just a small relief, you may recognize it, saying, relief, yeah? Relief, yeah? This is called viraga, meaning relief from attachment. Relief, yeah? Relief, yeah? Tell yourself, my attachment is being loosened, yeah? Anyway, be careful not to let an attachment rise again. Don't let that feeling of the self rise again. Avoid using the word that involves a conception of the self or the myself. This is so that you may see just the maneuvering of nature. Then you won't be able to take hold of this or that as the self or the myself. You who used to be so stupidly attached to this and that, to the point of getting into trouble with other people, may, after a certain extent of analysis, see that there is not really anything that is the self. The feeling especially does not constitute the self at all. Let me tell you this. The most evil thing that is the basis for attachment is the feeling. Whichever way you turn, you will see the feeling as the basis for attachment. This is pleasing, that is not pleasing. This is pretty, that is not pretty. This is delicious, that is not delicious. There is always this dualism, lovely and unlovely. So, whenever a feeling occurs, you should meditate on that feeling. When you learn to compare the various feelings, you will see that they are all the same. They all have to be either pleasurable or displeasurable. Where do they come from? No matter what, they contribute to the feeling of displeasure. They are the same in that they all contribute to cravings and attachments. The pleasant will be desired and held on. The unpleasant will be rejected and held as enemy. This is responsible for the breeding of self, myself and his self, my side and his side, friends and foes. Feelings can arise in all directions because they all are originated from two factors, pleasure and displeasure. These two factors are the problems. There won't be any problem insofar as there is not any pleasurable or displeasurable feeling. One can still remain stupid in silence. It can be stupidity without a role to play. However, when a feeling falls into pleasure or displeasure, then it will, with the urge of attachment, start to act out. Let me speak a little bit further. The world today is confronted with harms and malices. The reason is those criminals are possessed ill-advisedly by the feeling, sexual feeling, sensual feeling. These are all emotional madness that flashes momentarily. If one holds on to it as a God's command, one will commit oneself to it and decide upon an action. Anything can happen only in a flash, and then one will be bound to reap its consequence. This is just a matter of sheer madness, but it can become one's highest obsession and desire to the point that one puts one's life at stake. However, if one learns to think in the following manner, one will not be that obsessed by the feeling. That is, one will simply see a feeling just as the consequence of the law of nature, and there is no conception of the self. One won't put the feeling on a pedestal. One won't consider happiness or pleasure as the highest goal in life. In this way, one will experience the relief of attachment. One won't be led astray by feeling, since feeling is the source of delusion. Love and hatred can equally be the source of delusion. If you are able to think this way, you might be less involved in trouble. So, problem rests on feeling. Anyone, even a child, is capable of having a feeling, whether it be a feeling of love, anger, hatred, fear, anxiety, yearning, envy, or jealousy. These are all sources of unhappiness, since they constitute attachments. If you don't feel attached to those feelings, you won't continue to love, hate, fear, yearn, get angry, envious, or jealous. So each time you contemplate a feeling and are able to be relieved from an attachment, even little by little, you will proportionally be able to uproot your bad innate character and other habits. Things will eventually be improved, you see. You are supposed to watch the chitta. You will see how it attains an insight and how it is relieved from an attachment. This while you are practicing meditation. Then you may say to yourself, relief, yeah, relief, yeah, relief, yeah. Each utterance should mark the fact that you have attained a better insight. Watch closely how the chitta becomes relieved, 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 relieved. Here you come to the point at which you contemplate relief. For the next step, you are to contemplate the state of extinction. You experience relief, relief, relief to the point at which you arrive at an extinction. Here you tell yourself, extinct, yeah, extinct, yeah, extinct, yeah. Attachment is extinct. There is an extinction of the self and the myself. As you see such an extinction, you tell yourself, extinct, yeah, extinct, yeah. Do meditate most scrupulously, meticulously, and maturely when you come to this point. To sum up, here you are practicing both one-pointedness and insight, both on the basis of samatha and vipassana all together in each posture. That's why it is called meditation for the nuclear age. We are in the age in which we cannot afford to be slow. We can't afford to be slow. This is why we have to contemplate as exhorted. For example, we have to contemplate standing, analyzing its mental and physical aggregates, watch its risings and fallings, take notice of the impermanent and selfless nature, then experience a relief from that state. After that, you observe an extinction of attachment, and then witness for the last time that the attachment has been thrown away. This is it, the subject of meditation on standing posture. That is the subject of standing posture, a brief outlook. One more point to talk about concerning the standing posture. That is, you can practice this only within a limited time. It's not as convenient as the sitting position or even the walking movement. This is because in standing you have to exert the feeling in such a way that you would be able to keep yourself standing. Therefore, you may practice meditation on standing under a limited time, of course when you feel like doing it or when you need to. Yes, when you have to stand, then should you do your meditating on standing. Or whenever you feel like standing, you may work out your meditation then. It's necessary since we need to practice in every posture. If you cannot stand without support, you may lean against an object. In this case, you are to be mindful of the object you are leaning against or the feeling of contact with the object. So you may tell yourself, lean, yeah, lean, yeah. Or you may acknowledge, hard, yeah, soft, yeah, rough, yeah. You may specify whichever feeling you actually experience. As I have spoken of the matter on leaning, I now come to the end of my talk on the subject of standing meditation. I am completely exhausted myself, so I'm obliged to end my lecture here. You see, I feel dizzy, as if sitting in a boat rolling on the waters. All right, this is a reasonable time for me to stop my lecture for today. And after the monks chanting, you may listen to Reverend Payom's speech from the tape. This tape has been banned from being broadcasted on radio. I myself have not heard it, so we shall listen to it together. Let me end my talk here, and I will leave this opportunity to the Reverend monks to chant the Dhamma so that it will inspire and strengthen your practice of meditation.